from John's Gospel, chapter 18. We sort of jump ahead to much later in the drama as we encounter a conversation between Pontius Pilate and Jesus. Then Pilate entered the headquarters again, summoned Jesus, and he asked him, "Are you king of the Jews?" Jesus answered, "Do you ask this on your own, or did others tell you about it?" Pilate replied, "I'm not a Jew, am I? Your own nation and the chief priests have handed you over to me. What have you done?" Jesus answered, "My kingdom is not from this world. If my kingdom were from this world, my followers would be fighting to keep me from being handed over to the Jews. But as it is, my kingdom is not from here." Pilate asked him, "So you are a king?" Jesus answered, "You say that I am a king. For this I was born, and for this I came into the world, to testify to the truth. Everyone who belongs to the truth listens to my voice." So ends the reading of God's holy word. I invite us to pray. Gracious God, we hear this story, and in a sense, it is an example of the way in which your world comes up against the world. How spirit encounters life. And that can be quite an intersection. So we ask that we would be given the strength and the courage to live truly as though our power comes from you. This we ask in your holy name. Amen. Well, before service, I was chatting with Bob, and he reminded me that the Vikings are playing Green Bay today, which might not be anything of note to anyone, except for a Vikings Green Bay fan. But it is kind of interesting, because the last time they played this season, they tied. It doesn't happen too often. Well, I don't think this would be considered a big showdown, because they're both mediocre teams. But it did kind of segue into what I was going to talk about this morning, and that is that a lot of us enjoy a good showdown. I mean, a big one, like OK Corral, or maybe the Super Bowl, or even one in the Bible, like today's reading. We're fascinated, I think, by contests of power between champions that seem to be evenly matched. Someone has to win and someone has to lose, usually, except for Green Bay. So. And it's interesting, so long as the contestants are playing the same game, they got to be playing the same game. For example, it would be kind of silly to see the Buffalo Bills put up against the New York Yankees. Except, and this has probably happened, in the case of some kind of celebrity golf game. But generally it has to be apples to apples. Which, at least at first, it appeared to be between Pilate and Jesus. Well, at least Pilate thought so. The phrase "King of the Jews" evidently had been floating around Greater Jerusalem for quite a while. At least long enough to make Pilate a little bit nervous. And when you're a mid-level administrator in the Roman Empire, talk of a king in your district will grab your attention real fast. Kings don't come along every day. And unlike the occasional traveling sandal salesman or camel driver, somebody breezing into the city bearing the title king would put a guy like Pilate on guard. And so they meet. Pilate seems a little agitated, maybe even a bit frightened. And he seems to be stuck on this whole king thing. He asks Jesus twice in just a few verses if he's a king. It seems to be a matter of importance to Pilate. He didn't ask Jesus about his hobbies, whether he played golf or he bowled. He went right to the crux of the matter, to the place of Pilate's vulnerability and fear. And in that respect, Pilate isn't so unusual. A lot of us do that. We focus where the fear is. As a kid, if I found out that I had to go to the doctor, what would be the first question I'd ask my mom? Am I going to get a shot? As we age, maybe shots aren't so frightening, and our places of fear and vulnerability change. When we call the plumber to schedule a repair, we may not ask, is it going to be copper or PVC? We're going to ask, how much is it going to cost? And our minds are often preoccupied with our greatest fears, especially when we're not feeling real sure about ourselves. John Steinbeck wrote, "Power does not corrupt. Fear corrupts. Perhaps the fear of a lost power." And when Pilate began to sense that his power was threatened due to this charismatic teacher who seemed to be building quite a following, Pilate started to get squirrely and scared. Pilate's first response was to assess the danger, like the homeowner asking the price of the plumbing work, or the kid asking about the injection. Just how bad is it? Is this rabbi a real threat? How much power does he have? Are you a king? But Jesus answers very strangely. He responds, "My kingdom is not from here. I came to testify to the truth." And it's difficult to say how that sounded to Pilate. Perhaps it sounded like gobbledygook. Did it put his mind at ease? Maybe Pilate reasoned that his kingdom, that if it wasn't from around here, then he didn't have much to worry about. But there was still that troubling issue of the crowd that was following this guy. He may not be a local king, but he's got a whole lot of fans. So what does all this mean for you and me? We're not simply eavesdroppers on a conversation from first century Rome. As with all sacred scripture, there is a gift embedded in this exchange that we just heard. A gift, I think, in the form of a question. A question about where we find our ultimate power. With the winter season, we may sometimes worry a little bit about power, especially loss of it, because the consequences of power loss can be a little bit dire, especially when it's cold. And so in casual conversations, we might ask one another, maybe you have out in the social hall, "Hey, where do you get your power?" Okay, maybe when you've exhausted all of the topics. And some may answer RG&E, others may say NYSEG, a few might respond with geothermal or solar. But it's a rare soul who, when asked the source of their power, would reply, "Jesus Christ." True enough, my furnace doesn't run on Jesus Christ. Not directly. And it might be a little snide to answer that way. But beyond and beneath all the gas and the electrics of our lives, from where do we draw our power? What do we fall back on when all else fails? After the ice storm of 1991, generators were the rage because people didn't want to be caught again without power. Well, this Jesus from Nazareth was a curious guy. He didn't have an army. He carried no weapons. He didn't even have a horse. No uniform, no title, no rank. He simply testified to the truth. And as a man of the political world, Pilate could easily dismiss truth as so much philosophical fluff, as though to say, "Hey, I'll take a battalion of the Roman Guard over your truth any day." And without a doubt, a well-honed military will often win the day. But that's not the same as winning the hearts and minds of people. The kind of victory Jesus was winning as he testified to the truth. He said his kingdom was not of this world. He came to testify to the truth. And at that point, Pilate, who was solidly anchored in this world, may have begun to feel a little perplexed, even peeved. People obsessed with power often have little use for the truth. It's more of a nuisance sometimes than anything. Woody Allen once quipped, "Why ruin a good story with the truth?" Or in Pilate's case, why ruin a good empire with the truth? But Jesus was all about the truth. And as his followers, I think we are too. But if the truth can set us free, it can also make us a little bit odd and conspicuous. Like the little kid who shouted out that the emperor had no clothes on. The journey with Christ does make us a little bit odd, I think. Even our calendar's odd. Today is the last day of the Christian liturgical year. Even the church calendar is a little bit off from the ways of the world. We end our year 5 weeks before the rest of the world does. Without so much as a speck of confetti or a sip of champagne. Maybe we can sing Auld Lang Syne afterwards. But odd or not, as we reach the end of the year, it seems to make sense to do what folks often do when things come to a close. They take stock. In Alcoholics Anonymous, when a person stops drinking and enters a new life in recovery, one of the first steps involves making a searching and fearless moral inventory, which means essentially assessing one's fears, one's fibs, and one's foibles. In the Jewish tradition, the new year is marked by the holy day known as Yom Kippur, a time of paying attention to one's personal and national sins. Another inventory, and a time to embrace our need for a power beyond ourselves. Well, frankly, this time of year, probably the only inventory most of us do is the inventory of Christmas lights. 1.5 miles curled up downstairs in the basement, not a single light works. And so we may find ourselves heading off in search of the light at Lowe's. Perhaps in the coming days, as we take stock of the lights that work and those that don't, we can also take notice of where we plug in, how we access the power of Christ. I have a little power outlet in my still relatively new car. It charges a cell phone. It's a cool little thing. But the outlet is stuck down behind the stick shift in the dark, just a little bit right of the accelerator. It's a handy feature, but don't try plugging it in while you're driving. Because to paraphrase the bumper sticker, honk if you love Jesus, plug in your cell phone if you want to meet him. But it is a reminder, a little simple, funny reminder to me. Accessing the power of Christ might take a little doing sometimes, even a little searching in the dark. But it's worth the effort when we find the light of Christ.